Everything's coming up to Timberwolves. Yeah, in the zone. Simple dedication to the team when you're in the know. Timberwolves. Yeah, in the soul. Lifting all the positivity for the Wolves to grow. So, where we going from here, man? We listen week to week to get the clearest to clear. Recaps, got that. Soundcap, got that. Team ads, got that. So tell me what they do not have, huh? How dare you? Foolish question to ask, but I don't mean to go brag. But boy, they got all the stats, and they could go all the way back from KG to Zerbiak. And all I'm saying is that the cast, a one-stop shop for my Timberwolves. Timberwolves. Ain't a thing falling, everything's coming up. Timberwolves. Timberwolves. Falling from the autumn, ain't nobody gonna stop them. It's the Timberwolves. Timberwolves. Phonies, you can spot them, they the sheep under their clothes. Timberwolves. Timberwolves. Talk a lot about them, y'all don't really know. Let's go.
There we go. Welcome into the Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast. My name is Gabe Anderson. I'm joined, as always, by Chris Emerson. Chris, how we doing?
Oh, we're doing great, man. We're enjoying summer, and I said, I don't know, 3-4 months ago that my summer will be complete the moment that we sign Naz Reid to a multi-year deal. So my summer's complete.
There you go. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about when it comes to that. I'm a little surprised that he signed with us before even testing free agency, but we'll talk about that in a minute. In fact, let's get to it right now. Why do you think that Naz signed with us in free agency without even testing the free agency waters?
Yeah, I mean, my guess is that he did test the waters, meaning I think his agent talked to enough people. There's only 4 teams probably that can pay over the mid-level exception, which is like a little over $12 million a year for him. Mm-hmm. So out of all those teams, there's like the Spurs, there's there's about 3 or 4 of them, and 3 of them I think drafted bigs. Utah was one of them. They drafted a power forward. A couple other teams, drafted some bigs. So they probably found out that maybe there wasn't that big of a market much over the mid-level exception. So us giving them, 15 or 14 and a half or whatever it ended up being. And it's really only a 2-year deal. The third year Naz Reid can opt out himself. It's a player option. So instead of 14 million, if he thinks he's worth more than that, he can still test free agency, and I think will still be under 26 years old. So he could sign a huge deal even then.
Yep.
So it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
I agree. And the only thing, it was interesting because I was watching like fans of other teams reacting to this, not like Wolves-centric podcast, but like fans of like the Brooklyn Nets and other teams that were rumored going after Naz, like the Lakers and maybe the Clippers. And they were really surprised. They were really surprised that he signed without testing a free agency. But I got to be honest, I could not be happier. In fact, we came out with the video on this channel saying that priority number 1 was to sign Naz Reid. And that's exactly what we did. So check mark on that one. So what do you think? Do you think that we're going to go into the season with 3 big men and rotate all of them? Or do you think a Cat and or Rudy, but most likely Cat trade is coming? Or do you think it's coming in the future? What do you think?
I think Tim Connolly knows what he's doing. I'm going to put that out there just from the beginning. I think what happens is Tim Connolly is going to be happy to trade Cat the moment he thinks there's a good deal on the table. I think that he probably tried to trade Cat in currently and before the draft or soon after. I think he can only be traded in about a week or something like that.
Right. The 29th, I think. Isn't it the 29th?
I want to say it was the 7th.
Was it? I'll look it up. Keep talking.
It's something like that. So I think if a good deal showed itself, I think he would trade him. And I think it's very possible that since he can't be traded yet, that there might be a deal out there. Like it wouldn't blow my mind if the day that Karl Anthony Towns is eligible to be traded, the Blazers call and say, we're going to send some of our young talent, even as much as the number 3 pick, Scoot Henderson.
You think they trade Scoot? You think they do it?
I think they had nothing to lose in drafting him. Like, everyone was thinking that them drafting Scoot at 3, means that they're going with the youth movement. And I don't know how that means that. It probably means that they didn't see a deal that they liked for 3. And they know everyone who wanted 3, the 3rd pick, was going to draft Scoot anyways. So they might as well bring that asset in and keep negotiations. So I don't think it fully means that they're out on Dame Lillard being there, but
right.
Maybe it does. And even if it does, Dame Lillard's going to have to go somewhere. And moving, $47 million or whatever he's making is a hard thing to do in the NBA. So if there's a $37 million guy named Karl Anthony Towns that can be used to help out this trade one way or another, and we bring back assets we want, I mean, that's another option. So I think Tim Connolly is just waiting for the deal to be right. I think 365 days from now, Karl Anthony Towns is probably going to be traded. It's just a matter of when. And the only trouble with holding on to him is, the longer it goes timeline, the closer to the time when every team knows that we have to trade him.
Right.
We lose leverage the longer we hold on to him. So it's going to be a balancing act between us losing leverage, saying, well, we'll just keep playing him and we'll go to someone else, or, between losing leverage and grabbing the package we want. Tim Connolly is going to have to juggle that, and I believe in him currently to be able to do that.
So would you do this? Would you do Anthony Simons and Scoot for Cat?
Yes.
I would too, 100%. Particularly, I don't know if I'd do it if we didn't have Naz locked up, but now that we have Naz locked up, I don't see why not. Why not?
For sure.
I mean, Cat goes away. Cat can be great in some games. Obviously, he had the 60 points 2 years ago against the Spurs. So we know that he can be elite, but I mean, he's only like a 2-time third all NBA player. I mean, he's not, I guess I shouldn't have said elite. We know he can be good, but I don't know if he's the elite player that we thought that he might be when we drafted him first overall, but we will have, go ahead.
And he might just need new surroundings. Like, we might not be asking him to do everything he can do. Maybe we're not pushing him enough because he's kind of our golden boy because he was the number 1 pick. There's a lot of things in there. I mean, he can give you 24 and 13. He could probably average that, but I don't know if that's going to have a lot of wins tied to it. Like, I don't know if his numbers are completely, sometimes I think his numbers are pretty hollow. So
right.
Yeah, I would take that deal for 2 reasons. One, I don't fully believe in Scoot as this next coming of anything special. He might be great. He might be, but there's a lot of ifs.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can get a sure thing with Anthony Simons, where I know that he can at least give you 20 points a game.
Right.
I know that he can at least give you effective 3-point shooting. I know that he can at least give you something. You give me that and Scoot as a wild card upside guy, I'd love it. Yeah. Or I would take Simons and their 5th pick or 6th pick that they got last year in Sharp, Shannon Sharp.
He beat us at Target Center at the end of the year.
Yeah, he can put it up too.
That was my pick for the worst game of the year. That one where
I remember that.
Where we were going in like, okay, we got to win. Like, I went to that game
by 30.
Yeah. I was telling my friend, like, I want to be up 25 at half. Like,
yes.
And then they just kept hanging around, and then all of a sudden they get the victory. But it's in the past too. Yeah, I wouldn't mind Shaedon Sharpe either. I'm not sure. I've heard a lot of hype on Scoot. I don't know. Who knows if he's going to be a world breaker kind of point guard, but who better to learn from than a proven veteran like Mike Conley at point guard?
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly. And And I think talking about point guard, I think that's the biggest concern about all this for me is at some point the elephant in the room is we don't have a lead ball handler, play creator, um, that's trending to be on our team going forward. I'm not sure. I'm not sure Anthony Edwards can be that guy. I'm not sure he's wired to be a facilitator. And to be honest, I'm not sure I want him to be.
Right.
I understand that to reach his max everything, a Jason Tatum type, Luka Doncic, Harden, where he's got the ball in his hands, he's scoring and he's creating for others, is sort of the mold. But there's also something where I like the ball to swing to Edwards, and I like him to attack all the time.
Right.
Like I don't mind his mindset to be 100% attack, just constant pressure, constant coming at you, constant scoring. I don't mind that. So we need some sort of guard in any way that can help. We literally don't have. We have Moore Jr., who we drafted last year, who I'm not a fan of, is the only guard on our roster after this year,
Yep.
other than Anthony Edwards. So, like, we don't have a backup point guard. We don't have a starting point guard. We don't have a backup shooting guard. Like, we've got a lot of holes at the guard position. So that's where a Karl Anthony Towns trade kind of needs to center around for me is guard play. And there's some teams out there that have some interesting developments with extra guards going on right now.
Absolutely, for sure. So let's talk about something else that happened in the NBA today. I kind of wanted to mention it. We'll go back to the Wolves in a second, but the guy that has been rumored to have been traded for about I don't know 5 years now finally got salary dumped for Rudy Gay and like a second round pick. We're talking about John Collins. Of course, there were John Collins rumors. I think maybe 2 years ago, I remember we did a video that said, will John Collins be a Timberwolf? Obviously, the answer was no. But, I mean, is this just a salary dump for Atlanta to do something else, or is there anything more to it? It didn't make much sense to me.
There has to be one of the more confusing things in the NBA over the last half decade to me has been John Collins. I liked him in the draft because what I remember was he was a super athlete who also scored super efficiently in the post. So I'm like, well, that's something. So he's been like a productive player. He doesn't seem to be a headache. He seems to be a guy that's fine being a hustle guy, being a guy you don't need to run a lot of plays for, and he's still impactful. I don't understand how almost immediately after drafting him and him having success his rookie year, Atlanta has been on the warpath to try to trade him. And not only trade him, but they went out of their way to bring in other power forwards. They brought in
Capella,
Gallinari. They brought in Clint Capella. They drafted in the top 5. They drafted the dude with the O name I can't pronounce.
Okongwu?
Yeah, Okongwu. They drafted him in the top 5. They just kept on making moves to add more bigs when it looked like they should be fine with Collins, and then he's always in trade rumors. So I don't know what's going on there, but something seems fishy because it seems like they did not get any value for him at all.
No, and I mean, obviously the Wolves are in no need for a big right now, obviously, but I mean, you give him Taurean Prince and a second round pick, and maybe he's wearing Timberwolves blue this coming season. But it seems weird to me. And then on the Utah side of it, it's going to be an interesting front court. Walker Kessler and Lauri Markkanen and John Collins. I mean, as much as we wish we had Walker Kessler or whatever, that's in the past, but I mean, it should be an interesting backcourt for Utah. I don't think, particularly if they hold on to Jordan Clarkson and Lauri Markkanen going forward, they're going to be at least in the play-in conversation, I think.
Well, and then the thing about the Jazz is that to Hendricks in the 16th pick, who is thought of as one of the best power forwards in the draft. So now they're looking at a pretty deep bench of bigs as well. Um, I like Utah. I think they can play. They need some more, they need a guard who will pass maybe a little bit more than Clarkson, but they'll figure it out. They've got 255 draft picks, so
Yeah. Yeah, it just I feel like, and talking from an Atlanta standpoint, I don't think they're done. I don't know. I think there's something going forward. Whether that's, I mean, a potential DeJounte Murray to Minnesota thing. Maybe they go after Cat. I don't know. But I don't think they're done. I think they might move on from Collins and maybe DeJounte Murray as well and try to get a second star for Trey, because I don't know. In 1 year is a short audition for to see if it works, but I mean they barely made the playoffs. They gave the Celtics a little bit of a run. They took them to 6 games, but it was clear the Celtics were the better team. And I don't think, even though Miami made that run, I don't think that the Atlanta had the pieces to make a run to the NBA Finals this year. But yeah,
I don't know if you said they didn't have the pieces. I think they have the pieces. They just somehow don't play well together. Like if I
yeah,
look at Atlanta's roster, it looks like a top 2, top 3 roster in the NBA every time I look at it. Like they're so deep, they've got so much talent, but none of it just works. I don't get it. I don't understand Atlanta very much at all. I don't know why they've been so poor, but it is what it is with them. And I don't know if they are going to keep Trey over Murray. Like it's possible they'll move Trey instead of Murray.
Mhm. Well, I do, not to make this an Atlanta Hawks talk podcast, but I do wonder that they did go out and get a new coach to try to tender or try to appeal to Trey. So I think
Yeah.
they would give it at least till the trade deadline to
Yeah.
try it out. And I don't know. It just depends if they think that Trey is going to be the face of the franchise going forward, because there's one thing to trying to build a championship, and the Wolves obviously are trying to build to a championship with a generational talent like Anthony Edwards. But there's also something to, like those Indiana Pacers teams did for years with like Paul George and Danny Granger. There's something to being relevant.
Yeah.
Recent that maybe you don't win a championship, but hey, you're selling tickets, you're selling out the Fortress, as they call it, the Hawks Arena. I forget what it's called, but there's something to there's something to being relevant and having a guy that people want to go see every night.
Buy their jersey for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of new jerseys, as we saw on the intro, let's talk about the Wolves in the draft. Now they did move up to get Leonard Miller. And then they moved up to get.
Talk a little bit about Leonard Miller right off the bat.
Yeah, go ahead.
So
Sorry, I gotta pause it. Okay, go ahead.
Yep, I'm a big Leonard Miller fan. Before last year's draft, he was in the draft last year, not this year that just happened, but the year before.
Yep.
As the youngest kid in the draft, he was this nobody knew him guy out of Canada, super long, point guard skills, super raw athlete. And I loved everything I saw about him, especially as a high second rounder, take a shot at him. That's kind of where we were drafting. And I'm like, this is the kind of guy you put on your roster, and in 3 years, maybe he'll be something. So then he went to Ignite last year
Yep.
to play beside Scoot. And he was good, like averaged a double-double, filled into his body. He's, got thicker, like stronger. He grew another handful of inches, and now he's 6'10". I think he's grown 5 inches in like 2 years or something. And he is just one of the craziest athletes in the NBA. And not so much like when you think athlete, you think like a freak jump high kind of athlete, but he's got like Naz Reid sort of handles. He's got maybe McDaniels type footwork for a big guy to like stay in front of guys to move. Like He's not known as a defender yet, but I mean, he's so young. But he's got the agility and the body control to do things that most people at 6'10" don't do. So I'm excited to see what he's going to be like. I don't think it's going to be a this year type thing, but
Mhm.
it's possible that with this 2-year contract with Naz Reid, that he is the Naz Reid replacement in 2 years if need be.
Yeah, yeah, that's what
He
you
could
said.
be
If
that
need
guy.
be, like, yeah, if Naz Reid doesn't decide to, and it's possible, like if Naz Reid continues to get the kind of minutes and kind of exposure, we could be looking at 100 million for Nas at some point
Yeah,
potentially, and who knows if we'll be able to do that. Also, going back to the cat thing, one thing I wanted to mention is at some point we're going to need to pay Ant and we're going to need to pay Jaden if that is our if that is the plan, and I
yeah.
think it is. So I mean, getting rid of Cat will be vital for that. But yeah, I like it. Do you question at all that now you did mention that he's kind of a project and kind of young, but do you question at all us taking a forward when, like you said, we only have one guard on our roster through to next season? Do you worry about that at all, or?
Um, I would have been very interested to see if oh now I forget his name, but there was a Nick's real average name, Nick Smith or Nick, I forget. I think he was from Arkansas. But he
Nick
went
Smith,
just a couple.
wait, Nick Smith Jr.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So he was a guy that I liked as a point guard, and he went just a couple picks before us. And it would have
Yeah.
been interesting to see what happened if he was on the board because, like you said, we're so dry at guard position. But the fact that we didn't tells me two things. It means we either we coveted Miller, which I do believe is a possibility because he has that sort of upside that
Mhm.
I could see a team going out and coveting. But it also might mean we know that there's something happening with Carl Anthony Towns.
Yeah.
Is it, I mean, talking about guards, I said there are some teams that had a lot of guards. One team that has the most guards on their roster, even last year, was the Orlando Magic. Um, and not only do they have a ton of guards last year, but then they went out and um, they drafted I forget his something Black. What's his first name?
I'll
I'll
look.
think of it as drafted in the top 10, Anthony Black, who is a point guard kind of that I really like. He's a big guy. He's maybe 6'6", 6'7", but he's can defend three positions. He's an elite passer, not much of a shooter yet, but so they went and drafted, a point guard when they've got Fultz, they've got Anthony, they've got Suggs, they've got all these high draft picks, all these potential stars or what they think are quality players playing that position. So at some point they might have to move two of those guys. So I wonder if, I mean, it wouldn't blow my mind if there was a trade that we already have in the works with, Orlando Magic
Mhm.
to do something. I mean, there's so many teams out there that are their roster is so unbalanced with guards that it seems like there's something going on, but we'll find out.
Who
Like
would
I'm not done with the roster yet.
who would you want from Orlando? Like, who of those guards would you want?
I would take Fultz, I would take Black, and I would take I really like Jet Howard. So if you could take the equivalent of Market, Fultz, and then it was like the number 8 pick and maybe the number 24. You give me that and some salary filler for Cat, I would take it. I don't know if you would get Wendell Carter Jr. and Fultz and maybe a guy I would like. I like Fultz more than Anthony. Anthony, I know a lot of people are high on. He's got more spark, maybe, more of a shooter, but
Mhm.
Fultz is kind of a bulldog. He's kind of a downhill attacker. He's strong. He's a defender. I think his mindset would work well next to Anthony Edwards.
Mhm. All right. So, do we know much? I honestly don't know much about Jalen Clark. Do you know anything about him, or is he just kind of a late round?
Well, Well, he was the defensive player of the year in the NCAA,
Okay.
in all of the NCAA. He's an elite wing stopper. I mean, just shuts everybody down on the wing. So he's a defender. He can't really shoot much. He can't really do much else right now, but he can defend at a super high level. And what I love about that, and he's a little bit older, he's a junior. Let's say that this second round pick doesn't turn out to be a superstar, which is 99% the chance, you know. If
Right.
he just ends up being a bulldog defender that's 6'5", and he's the last guy on our bench for 5, 6, 7 years, when it comes to practice time, that's what you want. You want a guy that can go at Anthony Edwards every day. You want a guy that can go at your point guard, switch on him, and defend him at a high level. You want guys that can make your team better, maybe not on the court, but maybe off the court in the practice realm. So I think even the floor for this guy being a great practice player and, you know, the last guy on your bench getting paid nothing, I think is a huge asset to have on our team. And then the upside, you know, Tim Connolly says they had him as a lottery pick. So before he blew his Achilles out. So he blew his Achilles out right before March Madness. So who
I
knows?
remember that. Right. That's right.
Yeah. So he could end up being something special. But at the worst case scenario, he'll just be a really good practice player, which if you can get that at one of the last picks in the draft, I think it's a win.
Absolutely. And really, unless you're drafting Jokic at 44, it's really, like you said, it's really a crapshoot at the end of
And
the,
it's
the
not even
draft.
it's really not even a crapshoot. They're all bad. Like it's like
Right.
1 in a million. Like
Hmm.
it's so crap. I mean, it's strictly needle in the haystack. Maybe every 3 years you'll find a second rounder that becomes a legitimate starter year in and year out. Like it just doesn't happen. So if
Right.
you can get anything, any asset out of him, it's a great step.
So let's move forward away from the draft. Let's talk about free agency. Obviously, our big free agent is already a done deal. Uh, Jaden McDaniel, or no, sorry, Naz
Naz Reid.
Reid signing the contract. But who are some guys that you think we should look at free agent wise, or because it starts tomorrow? So who are some guys that could be on a plane to Minnesota tomorrow or in the coming days?
If I had to pick a guy that's, you know, not going to make much, or maybe, I don't know, but that I would take on our roster right now, it would be Dennis Smith Jr.
Okay.
Um, he played point in well, he was a top 5 pick, went to Dallas, I think, maybe the Knicks, and sort of fizzled out. Elite athlete, like top of the food chain athlete. But last year he came back from playing overseas and played for Charlotte. And when he started for Charlotte, when everybody was hurt, he was very effective. And he, you know, had nice assist to turnover ratio, had some big games, and we're not going to hit on finding some superstar more than likely. So if we
Mm,
can just find role players that can be a good backup point guard, like we don't have a backup point guard that's NBA ready in my mind. Like we need that. If we're going to be a playoff team, we're going to need that. So I would say best backup point guard available. And then if you have any money left over, find whoever is just a flamethrower shooter and put him on the roster, and I'll be happy.
So interesting that you say that because I'm going through some of some of the free agents tomorrow, and looking at some of them. A guy I like, I always love the last name. How about like a Seth Curry on a small deal? Also, Bruce
Yeah.
Brown is out there. If you want shooting, Bird writes. I know he plays small forward, but some shooting off the bench, maybe like a Joel Ingles.
I
Uh,
love Joe Ingles. Yeah. And
yeah,
he
no,
can
that
pass. He can do a little bit of everything. He's a good vet. He's kind of like a guy that you can run a little offense through and let him create for others. Yeah, I mean, there's guys out there I would love to have. I just don't know. A lot of the guys, like Joe Ingles, for example, he's going to search out for a situation that's best for him. He's not looking really for probably dollar
right.
signs that much. So I don't know if ours would be that situation, but it might be.
Uh, Another guy that I mentioned in a video. Now he is a restricted free agent. But hey, if you need a backup point guard, maybe bring back Trey Jones. I don't know.
I would give the mid-level exception the very first day of it to him and say, hey, if you want it, come get it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
He would be great. I mean, that's all we can offer is 12.2 a year right now is the max.
Right.
Or we can break that up in pieces, but all we have is $12 million to work with. So it gets a little tight.
Let's say we offered him like 10 to 12 million. Do you think the Spurs would match it?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking the Spurs Jones.
Trey, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe. Okay. I mean, I wouldn't if I was the Spurs, because I don't think they see him as like anything special going forward. Maybe so, like they don't really have a need for that, but maybe they would. I don't know.
Also, now I know he's gonna get some more money. What about like a coming in point guard? We saw him in the NBA Finals. Maybe he'll be asking for too much, but a Gabe Vincent potentially.
Gabe Vincent would be solid. Schroeder would be solid. I don't know. I mean, I'm telling you, I would take almost any point guard that we can get. Like, we're going to need help at the guard position.
But the other thing, the one guy that I don't think we should sign, I said this in a video earlier, I think we've seen the last game of Jalen Noel in the Timberwolves uniform.
Yeah, and I think that's for everybody. I think that that might be best for Noel. Maybe he needs new scenery. Maybe he needs something new. But as I've been saying for a long time with Noel, guys, his skill set are not hard to find. If you're looking for a guy who's, a point guard, shooting guard combo with really no passing ability and really just tries to score every time he touches the ball, you're going to find 6 or 7 of those in the second round every single game. I mean, I'm sure the NCAA leader in scoring almost every year is a guy with that same mentality from a smaller school that just puts up points. I know that. I think the guy who was 3 points short of the all-time NCAA record in scoring got picked up on a 2-way contract. I think he was out of Detroit. So, I mean, guys like that are easy to find. So, no, I have no interest in Noel at all.
Mm-hmm. Right. A couple other names here that I'm seeing potentially getting higher. Another guy, I know he's a small forward, but maybe take a chance on like a TJ Warren. I feel like he's the kind of and he's basically, I mean, he's got kind of the same game as Jalen Noel. I know he's not a guard, but he's a guy that just attacks the basket. I loved him when he was in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to buy his jersey because I loved TJ Warren. He's had some injury. He's had some injury problems, but at the right price, I wouldn't mind him.
Well, if I remember right, his last healthy year might have been 2 years ago, and he put up huge numbers. Like, he can play. And again, bring them all in. I'll take them. Like you gave me Naz Reid. Anything else is, and truthfully, Leonard Miller was big for me. I was a big I was very. It's always good when there's a guy you really like and you've been kind of following, and then your team drafts him. Like, it feels good. So that was good for me. I'm pretty happy with the offseason already. Just give me a backup point guard, and then we'll see what happens. And then anything with this cat front is just icing on the cake for me.
Right, absolutely, for sure. So it'll be an interesting day tomorrow with free agency. It's almost like early Christmas because I feel like I'm going to get home from work and see like 600 or 60 people sign with new teams. And it's like the trade deadline is the best. I don't know. I forget what the occasion was, but I, for some reason, had the trade deadline off. So I was on the computer. Obviously, the Wolves didn't do anything, but I mean, it was fun to watch other players.
It's so fun. The NBA is got it figured out how to keep people engaged 24/7, 365.
And then one more thing that I wanted to mention here is Rudy Gobert obviously gave up a lot of picks for him, gave up a lot of equity, blah, blah, blah. But he did announce that he is going to play for his home country of France in the FIBA thing. He's getting a lot of backlash. I saw like Score North saying, "Oh, it means he doesn't care about the Timberwolves or whatever." But do you read into that at all, or is this just a guy who wants to be patriotic and play for his team while he can?
I mean, Anthony Edwards is playing for his team.
Right.
He's playing for the U.S. I don't see anyone talking crap about that. The thing is Gobert got hurt last year doing it. So I would hope that, I mean, that can happen anytime. I just hope he's healthy. I don't mind guys playing high level basketball as much as they can. I'd rather have, put it this way, I'd rather have Rudy Gobert playing against, Giannis and all the other top NBA players in FIBA and when he's over in France than Karl Anthony Towns, what he's doing in France right now, which is going to the GQ magazine like dinners. I'd rather have a guy, in the gym working on his game, playing high level basketball than a guy, relaxing, living his vacation, which he has a right to be on vacation. I'm not trying to say he has to be basketball 24/7, but if he is basketball 24/7, I like that a little better. And remember, in FIBA, that's where they use Rudy a little bit more like we wanted to, where he's more aggressive offensively. So maybe this is just getting him more touches, and that'll end up paying off for us long term with a little bit more offensive game. We'll see.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, and this isn't really a comment on the FIBA thing, but I just noticed it. I was watching some highlights just from the past season, like the 10-minute videos they put on YouTube, which are so nice. You can watch a game in about 10 minutes. But I was noticing, like, for example, the play-in game against the second one against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I knew watching this when I was at the game, so you were more into the game. You didn't like analytically watch the game, but we just I think, and I know it's going to be different because they have Chet Holmgren coming back and whatever, but we just killed them in the paint all day long. And I think that's why Cat had such a good game. Rudy had such a good game. They had no answers. We were getting offensive rebounds, which we never do. And yeah, we just steamrolled them in the paint. So I think you see footage like that and hey, maybe we got something here.
Well, here's the deal. When you have Cat,
and that's without Naz too.
Yeah, when you have Cat and Rudy, I don't think people are like, well, you have to stagger them or whatever. If you put that much assets into these giants, I think what you have to do is going as big as humanly possible. Like next year, I'm going to want to see Naz play some three or Slow-Mo play some three. I want to see Cat, Rudy, Slow-Mo. Maybe a lineup of Cat, Rudy, Naz, McDaniels, and Edwards, or maybe not Naz, maybe Slow-Mo in there. So I mean, give me the biggest guys we can possibly do, and just punish guys. Do the whole mouse in the house thing. Go whoever has the guard on him, whoever has a 6'6" guy on our 6'10" guy, just clear out and post him up because it's going to happen all day long with that roster.
Right, absolutely.
And you'll deal with the transition D or whatever the trouble is. You'll deal with that. You'll deal with it. But what we're going to do is hopefully never be out rebounded, and we should crush everyone in the paint. And if we don't, then we need to blow it all up because it's not working.
Also, I just want to mention this. I remember at the beginning of the season, Ant wasn't playing too well, and it was all like, oh, it's too crowded in the paint. You know what happened during the playoffs? Ant was dominant no matter who was on the floor. So I think it showed growth for Ant. He's learning to play in different situations. It just took some time. People at the beginning of the season were talking, oh, it's going to take time for Rudy and Cat to play together. well, how about the star of the team learning how to play with two big men? And I think he's absolutely learned how to do that.
Well, he was quoted early in the season or mid-season. He said that never in his basketball career of any kind, talking all the way back, had he played with a big man that rolled. Never in his AAU, never in high school, never in college. All the big men he's ever had would pick and pop always. So all of a sudden now you've got this big guy that rolls. That creates a whole different kind of confusion on the defense. That puts people in different spots that he's not used to seeing. So yeah, it took him a while to get used to it. And once he learns to do the little drop off, to throw a little floater to him, to Gobert, he can easily get 3 or 4 more assists a game just on those easy plays. And it's going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He has I don't know if he ever will, but he could be like a triple-double guy.
Yeah.
He has the potential.
Yeah.
Like he's got the tenacity to go after the rebounds. Yep. We've seen that. The scoring's not a problem. I'm not worried about the scoring at all. No. And then, yeah, I mean, if you got big guys you can lob it to, like that's how Trae Young does it. I watch because my friend's a big Atlanta fan. Yeah. I watch him all the time. He just and because teams don't know what he's going to do. They don't know if he's going to do that little floater or he's going to lob it up to, well, then John Collins, but I guess Okongwu and Clint Capella too. So, I mean, his assist numbers can only go up. And one more thing I want to mention, just to backtrack a little bit, you were mentioning we want to see Ant play off the ball. I think if he can get the ball and the defense is already moving, that's just going to help him with the attack anyway. Because if he's just, trying to one-on-one, I like to say James Harden it, like just do a one-on-one, try to attack by himself. I mean, that's a lower chance of success. If the ball's zipping around and he gets it like with 15 seconds left on the shot clock and he can attack from there, and then we got 2 big guys crashing the glass, like I like our chances of scoring a bucket.
There's a real version of this team that is dangerous. And I mean, if Rudy Gobert's setting a pick and roll for Anthony Edwards, who's going downhill, you got Karl Anthony Towns spread out to the 3-point line, bringing his big out there at one side. You've got, McDaniels either cutting or spreading out to his 3-point line on the other side. You got some real dangerous things happening. So it's going to be exciting no matter what happens.
I agree. And I think we'll put a pin in it there. Chris, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, no problem, man.
And this is the Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast. We're trying to get to 200 subscribers. So if you're not subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button. It'll help us a lot. We got tons of videos coming up as the Wolves make moves in free agency and the offseason as well. Of course, if a Cat trade or Rudy trade, but probably a Cat trade happens, we'll be all over it with podcasts and individual videos as well. GM corners coming your way. So make sure to stay tuned to the Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves YouTube channel. And as always, go Wolves.